Everybody. We'll be starting our PointSense Plant 15 webinar here in a couple minutes. Just want to let everyone filter in, but sit tight and we'll get started shortly. I still got some people filing in here, but let's go ahead and get things started on time. And as we go through, just place your questions in that questions panel for the GoToWebinar. And we'll either answer them as we, type them back to you as we're going through the webinar, or we'll stop to answer questions along the way as well. But John, if you can, go ahead and start the recording. You good to go here?
Yep.
All right. So welcome everybody to PointSense Plant 15. This is Scott Diaz speaking from Kubit in our Houston office, and also have John Bunn, who's going to be doing a large part of the presentation today as well. I want to talk about what this session is about. So it's going to review all new functionality in Kubit PointSense Plant software for version 15. Okay, now the session it's really recommended for current users and or those who have had previous exposure to the product. So if you're completely new to Kubit, you may be a little bit lost in this session because we're assuming that you have some exposure to Kubit and PointSense Plant. But you're free to sit in, and we'll be recording this session as well, so everyone will be able to watch it later in case you got to go do something else. Just to look at the agenda here, the first thing I want to do is start off just with a quick review for those people that are new, or for those that are a little bit rusty or need to refamiliarize themselves. So what is the PointSense Plant product? Really, we're trying to fill the gap between the point cloud inside of AutoCAD and the design software, and the design software being things like your Plant 3Ds, your CADWorks, AutoPlant, MEP, things like that. The design software is where the intelligence comes in, and where you create your final deliverables for, simulation, creating ISOs, part lists, things like that. And what is PointSense Plant? Well, it's going to help us create intelligent plant objects from the point cloud data directly inside AutoCAD. It's going to be catalog driven, so that gives you the ability to import custom specs for piping as well as structural members. So everything's catalog driven, extraction from the point cloud, and this is of course working directly in AutoCAD as stated, working directly on the native Autodesk point cloud engine. So in this case we say RCP, but also supports the PCG engine from older AutoCAD versions as well. And just I stole this slide from our previous webinar about 2 weeks ago to give you some idea. PointSense Plant is compatible with all Windows versions 8.1 down to XP, and AutoCAD 2015 down to 2011. Any AutoCAD vertical PointSense Plant will work with, so AutoCAD, AutoCAD MEP, AutoCAD Plant 3D, Civil, anything like that. And again, working with the native Autodesk point cloud formats listed. Now, one of the big changes for the user's workflow is AutoCAD 2015. So I want to just review this. Now, I don't need to go into too much detail here because there is a video that we just posted on our YouTube channel which takes people through using point clouds in AutoCAD 2015. They'll go into more detail. And you can also watch our previous webinar from 2 weeks ago on that YouTube channel. So I just want to shoot through this quickly. As a review, in 2011 to 2013, folks would first register their scan data in the manufacturer's software. You would take that manufacturer's file format and bring it directly into AutoCAD, and you would do a point cloud index or a create point cloud, and it would convert it from the manufacturer's format into that PCG file that everyone was used to. And of course that PCG would work across AutoCAD, and eventually it started working in Revit and Inventor, and you could do a point cloud attach to attach the point cloud into the drawings, or you could use our Kubit insert point cloud. Now this method worked inside of 2014 as well. You could actually create your point clouds directly inside of AutoCAD. But in 2014, many of you know that Recap was introduced, Autodesk Recap, which still you would bring your scanner manufacturer's formats into the Recap program, or you had the option to register the data in Recap Pro. But essentially, after you import to Recap, for each scan position, you had an RCS file. So if you had 10 scans in the field, you have 10 RCS files, and then you have a project file which references all of those individual scan positions to the RCP. So really afterward, you could import that RCP file directly to multiple programs in the Autodesk world. The problem was, especially in AutoCAD 14 and below, the graphics engine was so poor that if you overloaded AutoCAD with points, it really looked bad. So what we found is that most people were cropping out areas to reduce the number of points in the AutoCAD environment and creating custom RCS sections or PCGs from Recap. Just to make things more manageable, you can actually see what you're doing. Now what's nice about moving to 2015, you can really cut this step out because of some major enhancements to the graphics engine. So let's talk about just quickly what's new with 2015. I just want to touch on that, but again, you can review these more in detail later. We do have an improved graphics engine, so for users that means larger clouds at higher densities, the ability to increase the point size per pixel, thicken things up and make it look nicer if you want. We have a higher point max option, so you can see more points on the screen per point of view. You can forget about PCG. Now, I say no longer supporting PCG. If you have legacy drawings, you can still bring them into 2015, but it's not going to look good like the new engine, RCP RCS in 2015. So it's really recommended that you go through and generate the RCP project from Recap. You cannot create PCGs directly in AutoCAD anymore. You have a nice new point cloud manager. This is great because whatever scans that you have from Recap, your project, the way it's set up, converts directly over to AutoCAD now. So if you have your 30 scan positions or whatever, now you can manage those individual scan positions via the point cloud manager from Autodesk inside of AutoCAD. And as you isolate individual scans, it improves the viewing quality because it reduces the number of points on screen. So that's really nice. You'll also be working with point cloud OSNAPs. That means that the 2D node OSNAP no longer is functioning to snap to point clouds. You actually need to go into your 3D object snaps, and you'll find point cloud object snaps in there for snapping to the Autodesk point clouds. So just a quick summary, if you're starting to move to 2015 or already have, this is your workflow. You're not creating point clouds in AutoCAD anymore. Import your scans to Recap, open the RCP file in AutoCAD, and use the Autodesk Point Cloud Manager to manage your scan positions. All right, so as we go through what's new with the PointSense Plant product, I'm going to, and John's going to do the same, introduce what's currently in the product and then what's new about the product. So first, talking about enhanced scan navigation and viewing quality. Many of you that are current users, you know about kubit's VirtuSurv program. And VirtuSurv, just for if you don't know, is a standalone Windows-based program. It's not an AutoCAD plugin. What it's going to do is create a nice planar view per scan position. So it looks like a photographic view, and we can connect that photographic view, the coordinates behind each pixel, to the AutoCAD command prompt so that you can really see high detail and transfer the coordinate of choice versus trying to fish through the more difficult to see raw scan data in AutoCAD. So this is still recommended and still available. Anybody that owns PointSense Plant, if you're users out there and you have no idea what I'm talking about right now, you own this if you own PointSense Plant. You can use the VirtuSurv for AutoCAD connection. But what's new with enhanced scan navigation? Well, if you're moving to 2015, Autodesk developed the ability to jump into the scan view per scan position, which is really great. The problem is that when you try to zoom or pan, you move out of that scan position. It knocks you off the focal point. So it's a little bit annoying. It's great and also not great at the same time. So we wanted to develop something that would help freeze you or anchor you in that planar view directly in AutoCAD. And so we've added kubit scan navigation. And John's going to show that more in detail, but basically it keeps you stable in that scan position. And you can also, now you see some of the spheres on screen and some links. You can actually move from scan position to scan position without having to jump out of the scan view. So it's kind of like a nice Google Street View per scan position inside of your AutoCAD. And finally, there's also going to be the option to hyperlink these spheres in case you want to open up the VirtuSurv scan position. Now, some of this is actually being added to the product as we speak. And for maintenance customers, you'll see this get rolled out probably in the next week or two. So I'll answer questions on that, but I'm going to let John keep going here. He's going to talk about what's going on, starting with pipe and structural catalogs.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, so kind of the same way that Scott was doing it. First thing I'll do is, explain core parts of the PointSense Plant product, just kind of give an overview, and then we're going to talk about what's been changed or improved in the latest version. So the first thing to know about PointSense Plant is that it is catalog driven. So anyone who's used this is familiar with this concept. Everything we do is taken out of various catalogs that have either been provided by us or that users created on their own. Now we do provide quite a big list of catalogs and specs, and we constantly provide custom catalogs for customers. Traditionally, these are your main materials and ratings: carbon steel, stainless steel, 150 up to 2500, standard pieces, that kind of thing. And we always had a way to import them from Plant 3D, or for CADWorks and AutoPlant users, you can use their spec editor to create the Plant 3D specs and then bring them into Kubit. And we also had the same thing for steel as well. We had all your core AISC, CISC, and DIN pieces. Now what's been added is pretty much every single fitting that lies in these catalogs is imported now. And what I mean by that is certain fittings were not transferred in the past, like crosses, Y-strainers, OLEDs, that kind of thing. That is no longer the case. Also, the items that you import carry their realistic graphic quality as they are defined in the catalog. So gate valves have hand wheels, flanges look like flanges, things like that. And you don't have to have Plan 3D for this to take place. Right out of the box, Kubit is going to have this additional functionality. But let's say, for an example, that you went into the spec editor and you created a custom valve. You'll actually get that appearance to carry over. That helps quite a bit, as you'll see later on when we're doing like walk the run, for example. When you see the preview on the cloud, and it actually looks like the piece, it makes it much easier to verify whether or not you inserted the correct component. Now, we are going to have these slides available for download, so this part at the bottom here is just to show current users the new process to importing your Plant 3D specs. It's slightly different. The only difference is now you have to be in a drawing that's currently in a Plant 3D project, and you have to navigate to that specific spec sheet folder. We need that because we have to be inside of the plant project in order to bring in the actual graphic representation of the objects. And once you're done with that, save the drawing, and all of that gets saved. Okay, so this right here is probably what people spend the majority of their time doing, and it's walk the run. For people who are not familiar with this or vaguely familiar, it's essentially a semi-automatic approach to finding patterns in the cloud. All of these pieces are intelligent from the catalogs, and we have multiple options to insert them, whether it's just clicking a point for a search region and then we find that. We have manual insertion methods, and then we have a method that we introduced about a year ago that helps out quite a bit in a lot of stickier situations, where you can do 3 or more points around a circle, for example, a weld, to be able to insert an item. Now, what's new with Walk the Run, like we were saying with the catalogs, much more realistic fittings. I almost put up a slide here showing the old flange versus the new one, but I think we've all had enough nightmares of the old flanges to last a lifetime. We also have N-type constraints for fittings, and what that means is, let's say I just inserted a weld neck flange. Well, now the software is only going to look for items that would match up to that flange. Flange valve, maybe another flange, etc. We also have insertion point toggles for all fittings that are intelligent to that fitting class. So flanges can be inserted by front of face, back of face, or hub. Valves can be inserted by front of face or back of face on either side. So that's actually a nice feature, especially for me. I like to do tie-in points by back of face, so I toggle to back of face, and typically what I'm going to do is use VirtuSurv, make sure I get a nice coordinate on the back of that face. Just a little review here for sort of a middle step in order to get to your end deliverable. Apply constraints really hasn't changed, but it really didn't need to be honest. I just want to explain its job is essentially to take all these fittings and these patterns that we found, take their center lines, and then make them coaxial and make them comply with design constraints. And what we mean by that is, in the real world, fittings are going to be slightly off of their catalog version. They're not going to be exactly 90 degrees. It could be 89.97 or something like that. But in order to take these into your piping packages, they expect these fittings to be perfect. They're looking for design, not as-built. So the goal really is to take, this is an exaggerated example of center lines from a run, but to take that and make everything line up. All your welds line up, all your center lines are coaxial, all the fittings match the catalog definition. Now from there, this is kind of the end piece where you get to the point where you can make deliverables. And in the video that's running right now, what we're doing is we're creating Plant 3D objects. But there are other exports as well. If you just need solids, we can do that. If you want to have intelligent center lines, we can do that. And actually those center lines are used quite a bit to take it into some other piping packages or even MEP. You can right-click on the center line and choose the Convert To option inside of AutoCAD MEP, and it lets you create MEP objects from that. Now, what you're seeing on the screen here is the actual Plant 3D export, and we've spent a lot of time with the Plant 3D team to automatically create Plant 3D objects right out of the cloud. And then from there, you can generate your isometrics, you can continue your new design, do whatever you need to in your piping design package. All right, so let me go ahead and show you some of the new features as far as piping is concerned. Now, this is 2015, and you can see here you've got your familiar section manager, and then you've got the point cloud manager under it. And they actually introduced this in 2014, but the major addition is that you now have it broken down into scans. So if I wanted to, I could isolate a single scan, and you can see that I can just jump right to that scan. Which is nice. And then you have a Navigate to Scan View option. Now, this looks great right now, and then as soon as you zoom or pan or orbit, you can see you lose that focal point. And this is what Scott was referring to before. So we actually added Scan Navigation mode, and I'll go ahead and show you how this works here. One sec. So the way you do it is you can turn on or off the spheres of the tags, and then we turn on Scan Navigation mode, and then it's going to ask me to select a scan. Now, once I've done that, I'm in that same view, but you'll notice as I zoom, I don't lose my focal point. And this, to me, is a huge upgrade, to what we've done in the past. This is directly in AutoCAD, and you can always take the points and add a point size to it, make it even thicker. But I mean, has anyone ever seen a cloud look this good in AutoCAD? Now, from here, we're going to go ahead and start piping. And before I do walk the run, I do want to show you the catalog part of this. Now, really, it's going to look very similar to anyone who's used the product in the past. You've got your catalogs, you've got your active sets. You'll notice a lot of different extra catalogs here. For example, we have a flange catalog that actually looks flanged. We've got PVC, we've got ductile iron, You can see the unistrut steel, some AWWA stuff here. But the main difference, and this was explained in the previous slide, is the Plant 3D import. Really, the only thing you need to do is make sure you navigate to your spec sheets folder. If you ever need to know where that's at, just go to your project manager inside of Plant 3D. It'll tell you where your project's located, and then right in that folder, you're going to have the spec sheets folder. So once you do that, you do Plant 3D import, and you actually, it's going to bring it in as a new catalog now with the name of that spec. So you don't have to create an empty catalog and then import it into it. Just kind of a minor improvement there. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to do walk the run and find a new run. And right now, if I click anywhere on this pipe, I'm getting a point on this pipe. Whether that's from the improved point filtering from AutoCAD, but also the fact that I'm in sort of a makeshift planar view here. It's a really nice change. So now what I'm going to do is insert a flange, and if you can see this red line, this is what I was saying earlier about being able to toggle insertion points. So if I do it again, I'm now doing back of face. And then hub, and also if I need to, I can switch to a different scan in the middle of walk the run just by switching on a different scan sphere. Now, typically when I do flanges, just kind of an old habit, I like to use VirtuSurv, but having this sort of view on it and not having congestion from other scans helps out quite a bit. Now, after I've loaded that flange or inserted it, if you notice, I can only insert items here that will connect to a flange. So this is what I meant earlier about, compatibility with end types. Now, what I'll go ahead and do here is insert a gate valve, and then I'm going to put in another flange behind it, and then we're just going to start doing walk the run like we always did. So in this case, I'm going to put in a pipe, 2 points, and then other pipe here. You see I can just skip the elbow, just tell it we're going this way, and continue like that. So, I'll finish that pipe run like right there, and then if I wanted to continue in the other end, I can do that as well, and in that case, I can do back of face. So let me go ahead and just do a continue off of this pipe, and I'll put in this flange, and again, I always recommend VirtuSurv if possible, but if I can toggle to the back, I always tell people if you can see the bolts coming through the solid, then typically you've got yourself a nice point on the back of face there. So what I do is just click there. I still see the bolts going around. None of them are hidden, so that means that the plane of the flange is correct. And then from here I can just hit OK. So very easy to run this. Much easier than before where you kind of had to switch between two screens. It's a nice fluid movement this time. Then what I'll go ahead and do is navigate out of scan view. Just so we can see everything a little bit better. And then I want to show you right here, because this will, one sec. This will show you the reason for apply constraint. So you can see this elbow is a little bit off. Now what I want to do is actually make all these fittings line up, because if I don't, then I'm going to get water drops in Plant 3D. So I'm going to use apply constraints, choose any object on the run, and then we have a couple of different strategies here. If you're dealing with a pipe and design package, you need to use strategy 2. We explain that much further in other presentations. But once I'm done, you'll see everything lines up, everything's coaxial, and then we're ready to take it to Plant 3D. Now to do that, all I'm going to do is go to this export, and you see we have other options. If I wanted to create a center line, I can do that. We have the ability to export into a table if you need to know, material takeoffs and things like that. If you need standard solids, we can do that as well. But here I'm just going to do Plant 3D. Those objects have been created. And then from here, generate an isometric. So here I'll say ISO creation, quick ISO. If you want to, and I'll show this afterwards, you can create new designs just by highlighting the Plant 3D component. And it's going to give you that little plus symbol and let you continue your piping. All right, so the isometric's done. This warning is because I switched to a 600-pound flange at the end there. It'll even say right here. But here's the isometric. Here's your bill of materials. bolts, gaskets, everything. Simple as that. So that was just from actual just point cloud being inserted all the way to getting a deliverable. Okay. So one brand new feature that we added is a tie-in point extraction, and you'll see it here in the video. It's really nice for people that don't need to model everything and you just need a tie-in point. Maybe you need a nozzle or just a flange that you're going to connect to. And there's multiple insertion methods for this. You'll see me using VirtuSurv here. Now the way I like to do it is multiple points on the flange outside diameter and then multiple points on the back of face. And the reason I want to do it like this is it's the most reproducible way for multiple users to get the exact same tie-in point. And that's really the goal of the software is repeatability. So, you can always have a nice view of an outside diameter of a flange, and you can always have a nice view of the back of face. If it's an exposed flange, then you can use front of face. Probably a lot easier to do it that way. But you can see here it labels the tilt, labels the angle, the roll direction, its actual coordinate, and then it tells you what the tie-in point is. Now we are currently working on this product to improve it. It's in the new release, but it will actually get a subsequent sub-release sometime in the near future. But we are going to be adding additional outputs and results for this. Now the structural part of the product probably has received the most attention. It's improved the furthest in my opinion. Just as it is. Structural steel is we're finding structural pieces off the cloud. We're using the standard catalogs that I had mentioned earlier, and then users had the option to create custom profiles. And I actually did this quite a bit, like I said before, with Unistrut. I've actually done it with cable trays, even some ducting pieces here and there. But then you had the ability to extend the pieces to each other and then use apply constraints. Now, apply constraints, we'll talk about in this here. It basically aligns all the pieces of steel to a grid. And this is an actual example sent to us from a customer, all kinds of steel in here. And then you just set a tolerance and then choose all the pieces, and you see all of the center lines line up to each other. So as long as they're within that tolerance, we believe that they will be connected, or they should be connected, and then you can create your vertical, horizontal, or diagonal grid. And then this actually plays a huge role in the next step where you're going to export out the results. Because the majority of people doing structural usually end up doing it in a different design package, or at least need to take the results to that. For example, Revit Structural. So Scott will actually show a little bit on that coming up. So what's new with steel? Well, we have automatic steel detection now, and that is, in my opinion, that was a huge piece of the puzzle that was missing in the last release. We have all kinds of tools that I'll show you that get you through certain situations where it's a noisy area, maybe there's some obstructions, things like that. We have a way to filter the beam, so if you only want to look for channels, well then you only have to look for channels, and that actually helps in the case where you scan from a certain position and maybe you can only see the back face of the steel, and the software is like, well, that looks like either a wide flange or a channel or an angle. We don't know because there's not enough scan locations. You can actually just say, look, it's a channel, just look for channels. We also have an eraser tool, which sounds kind of funny, but when you see it, it really helps the process. And really its goal is to get rid of any noise in the pattern that we're looking for, and I'll show you how to use that. And then the part that Scott's going to show coming up is the SDNF export, and really we chose SDNF because all of the major steel products accept that as an import, including ASD, Advanced Steel, Revit Structural, RISA, etc. Okay, so what I'll do here is turn my points back on, and I'm going to go ahead and go back to that scan view. I always like to look for the black holes, or you can just turn your spheres on. And then let me go ahead and just nav to it. All right. I think the more you work in this view, the more you're going to love it, because it really helps. And then the ability to switch in the middle of a command from scan to scan, it's about as close as you can get to having VirtuSurv inside of AutoCAD. So we're going to go ahead and do fit beam, just like we always would. Most things look the same, except for this detect type button here. We should name this button change life, but they went with detect type. So what I'm going to do here, you have to make sure that you pick 2 points on the same plane of a piece of steel. It just gives us a way to look at it. And now we're dealing with the preview. Now, I chose this spot because it has some noise, and I want to show you the extent of the tools to fix that. But first what I'll do is go ahead and change my filter type, just to show you, to wide flange or I-beam, however you want to call it. Now, if you'll notice, my cursor is an eraser here. But the first step I want to do, it's kind of hard to see from this view, but you got this little red rectangle, and as I use this slider, it actually moves. So it allows me to choose a better section to compare against. So if you get to that point where, you know, maybe there's something right in the way and you can see it in this preview here, then, you know, you can go ahead and shift that and then just do a recalculate. This eraser tool now will let me actually erase errant data if needed. So if you can see here, I've got a little bit of noise. I can just actually erase that. And anyone who likes Photoshop should like that tool. And then do a recalculate, and you can see that fit is about as good as it's going to get. So I'm going to say insert, and you can't really see the steel because my cloud's too dense. It might be the first time anyone said that inside of AutoCAD. But what I need to do here is do an extend and then just pick a point. Now this is also different than the past, just slightly different. But the extend kind of stays in the prompt, so I can just keep clicking points over and over. Now once I have it extended, my preference is to do a retry to have it refit with the new piece. So you can do that. And once you've detected that piece, now I don't have to do that again. Now I'm just going to click any 2 points on the next piece and let it fit it. And what you'll notice is that the detection is faster and much more accurate. Even in some situations where the data is just not very crisp. So you know, a lot of times people were doing the postpone fitting option to insert multiple pieces because they didn't want to sit there and wait around and then do a retry and swap and all these extra things that you had to do. But you don't really have to do that anymore. So my preference personally is to just kind of go through it one piece at a time, because you can see it as it goes, but also it's fast enough that, you know, it doesn't slow you down that much. So what I'll do here, since this is a different piece, is I'm going to do detect type again, and just remember, keep it on the same plane. And you see it grabs that profile almost immediately, and there's almost 1,200 pieces here, and it still found the right one in about half a second. So the speed is really good, and I don't really have like a super machine or anything like that. So here I'm just going to do the same thing, extend the pieces, and then just, you know, move on to the next one and fit that. Hopefully you can see, I mean, the fitting is really accurate here. And what I'll go ahead and do is end this, and then I'll switch out of scan view or scan nav. And scan, when you switch out of it, it's just going to restore your previous view. So, you know, wherever you were at before that, it'll bring that back. Now, I want to show the apply constraints, and to be honest, it's not going to have a huge impact here, except if you can see these are kind of going into each other incorrectly. But essentially, all you need to do is take these pieces and just say, okay, I'm looking for these to be part of a grid, and hopefully you can see here that it actually moved it down slightly. Now, some other tools that you have is the ability to extend steel to another piece of steel, and you can do that with multiple pieces. And you also have the ability to extend steel to a point. So just for an example on that, if I were doing extend steel to a point, I can choose multiple pieces, and then when I'm done, I just say, okay, I want to extend them down to here. and you see they all extend using their current axis. So really, just kind of get all the steel pieces on the cloud, get them detected, get them modeled, etc., and then let our post-editing tools take you across the finish line. From here, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Scott so he can show you the new SDNF stuff.
Yeah, not too much of a demo here, but I just noticed in our last session about 2 weeks ago, we did have a lot of questions on the SDNF export and whether or not it would actually create Revit objects. It does. Let me tell you how it works. If you noticed in that ribbon that John was showing earlier, the pipes and beams ribbon, you do now in version 15 see that. You'll see your export to solids for which will create a AutoCAD solid of structural and a center line, but you also see an export to an SDNF file. The first thing you really need to do to prepare it for import to Revit is you need to install the SDNF importer and exporter tool for Revit, and you can find that in the Autodesk Exchange apps section. So you just log in with your Autodesk username and password. It's part of the Revit extensions tools, and once you have that installed, you're pretty much good to go, because the step to go from PointSense Plant to Revit is really simple. You export your kubit structural members as an SDNF, and you just choose that option I mentioned in the ribbon. It'll create an SDNF file for you, and then you open your Revit project, and once you have that extension installed, you choose the SDNF import. It'll ask you, are you sure you want to import these objects? You say yes, and just switch to a 3D view, and you should see your structural members in there as intelligent structural items, not just as masses or something you can't use in Revit. So that's a nice addition, and you can see it's a pretty simple process. You just need to install one little extra piece into Revit. But that's all I got, John. Nothing too fantastic.
Thanks, Scott. We're going to jump into another brand new tool. It's called Planar Analysis, and it's very similar to what we had before with the cylinder analysis or the tank analysis. You have the same output options here, where you can create a solid model, you can create a new cloud, and then maybe color code that based on deviation. You could also calculate volumetrics, and then do an actual polyline grid where it labels each plus or minus deviation based off of that flat plane. So in the case that you want to see if something's vertically plumb or how flat something is, and also if you want to know like the volume of a spill area around a tank, or maybe you want to see the volume of a dirt pile, it's able to do that. And then it also has multiple output options, and the one I'm going to show you is called Points Along a Grid. It's a really nice feature that takes each grid and just plots a specific point, and whether you want low point, high point, average, however you want that. And one of the ways that it really helps actually is for Civil 3D users, because if you're trying to use a point cloud to create your surface tins or your DTMs, I'm sure you've noticed that they're very heavy and it slows AutoCAD down quite a bit. But if you do this right here and create a grid of points, you can use those points, add Civil 3D properties to them, and then add those to a surface, and it is much lighter, and you still get the exact same result. All right, so let's show that in action. So what I'll do here is I'm going to go ahead and turn all my scans back on, and we're going to jump to a plan view. All right, and actually, give me one sec. Now we have the option to attach a plane, or to do the analysis against a plane, or to do it against the UCS. So my preference is UCS, but if you want to do a plane, that's fine as well. And then, we also do have some new clipping tools. I'm sure some people in here will be happy to know this, but we have circular clipping, which I know has been requested. And then we also have rectangular clipping. And for this one here, I'm going to do rectangular clipping just to get a nice section. And so you can see, our clipping tools are essentially the same with those two new additions, but they're pretty nice, pretty handy tools. So this is what we're dealing with right now. And what I can do is use our planar analysis. And you can see we have a couple of different options. I could generate a solid, like a solid of this surface. I can do a polyline grid, which people are probably familiar with from the tank analysis. But what I wanted to show you is the grid of points. And this is what I was saying before. You can attach it to a plane, or you can attach it to the UCS. I think UCS is easier because it takes the creating a plane step out of it. But if you already have planes created, then by all means, go ahead and go with that. Now I'm going to go into the settings here and show you a couple of different options. One of the major options is this distance value. And what that means is if something goes beyond a certain distance from that plane or that UCS, it's going to ignore it. So if you can imagine you're trying to get like a land survey, if I put this to like 6 inches or 3 inches, it'll actually cut off trees and bushes and just disregard them. It's actually a really nice feature. So here, I'll just go ahead and leave it at I don't know, 6 inches should be fine. And then we have the actual grid size. Now this grid size is independent, of each other. Or what I mean is the X direction and the Y direction both have an independent value. So I'll say here, we'll do it 6 by 6. If you're doing a smaller area, I recommend making this smaller because it does actually create a really nice visualization of that spot. So if you're trying to do like an ADA ramp or a curb or something like that, just a curb, then make this number small, and you'll like the results. Now the sampling method, average is going to take everything within that 6 by 6 grid, find the average deviation or elevation in this case, and then plot that. Maximum is basically high point, minimum is low point, and nearest would be the point closest to the plane or the UCS. So if you're trying to compare, like, all right, what's the closest part of this object that comes, closest to this wall, for clash detection, then you could use nearest. All right, so now that we're ready, I'll say start. And you should see there we go, a little longer than it usually takes. That's a good thing if that was still only 3 seconds. But here's a grid of points for everything on there. And if I turn the cloud section back on, you can see all of that stuff, the steel, you can see the plumbing here, everything like that. It got disregarded. And it's not like we actually just made an empty area on the grid. We actually went ahead and plotted the grid below it. We just disregarded a certain elevation. So like I said, if you can imagine this on a land surveying example, removing trees and removing bushes and that sort of thing, really nice feature. And these are all AutoCAD points, so if you wanted to, just go ahead and take them into Civil 3D, if you are using Civil, and add these points to a surface, and you'll see that your AutoCAD will not slow down, and you'll still be able to generate your contour lines, your elevation ranges, that kind of thing. Okay, so really the last part of the core functionality with with PointSense Plant is tank analysis. And really what it is, and a lot of people were using this, but also there's a lot of people that didn't have a need for this, but it does have some nice additional benefits now. But you could unwrap a cloud where you sort of unwrap it into a flat version. So it's almost like taking a rolled up poster and flattening it on the wall. You could color code it by deviation. You could create volumetric and deviation reports that could go into Excel. You could do the polyline grids, solids, etc. And then you could also include deadwood. So if you needed to remove volumes for internal piping or just objects that were inside of the tank itself. Now what's changed is that one is the interface is much better. Before it was just an interface just to get the options on there and give the user a way to tweak some things. But now it's much more condensed and the options it's much more intuitive. You also have the ability to independently control the horizontal and vertical increments. So a lot of people wanted to say, okay, well, I want to every 2 feet around the perimeter, but I want to know its volume every eighth of an inch. And if you tried to do that in the past, you'd have to do an eighth by eighth inch grid, which essentially took a long, long time. So we made those work independently of each other. The other thing that we added to it is conical analysis. And you have ways to fit various shapes. So it doesn't have to be a circular cone. It could be elliptical. It doesn't even have to have the same center line. So if you need to do that on a part of an exchanger, for example, you could do that. It essentially gives us more ways to evaluate different pieces of equipment and really just different shapes in the point cloud. So from that, what I'll do is go ahead and pass this back to Scott. I definitely thank you for your time.
Okay, sorry, I was practicing my Spanish chatting here with a gentleman. It's pretty bad. I need Marco's help. Let's cover this last part here, Kubit team observations. But what we mean is, you know, John and I were talking yesterday. We just added this part at the end. The user base has grown pretty dramatically with PointSense Plant product, and for that we thank all of you for helping us make it successful. But one of our ideas is maybe to start having more frequent webinars for best practices. And I kind of want to get your feedback on this, so feel free to send us emails, to write in the chat form if you like this idea. Just some ideas like getting the most out of walk the run. Avoid using workarounds or, you know, poor workflows or old school workflows to get through projects because you hit a barrier with something in our product when we know that there's a way to get it done more efficiently. You know, there's a number of ideas written here, sorting out file format issues or point clouds that won't import properly, things like that. A lot of these the problems that put a halt to what you really want to do, which is use the software to its full capability instead of reverting back to other methods. Or John and I could sit here and talk for hours over you know, tips and tricks that we could show you. So if you like this idea, let us know, and we'll start just scheduling these things. And in fact, I believe we're going to go ahead and just schedule one anyway. So look out for that, and give us your feedback on what you would like to see as well, and maybe we can add that to the session. And that's about it. It was just really a general comment about wanting to make sure that you're getting the most out of the product. But you know, with that, you know, we had a quick session. In fact, we finished under time. We wanted to save some time for questions, and what I'll do is I'm going to read through some of the questions that were posted. Maybe that will spur some additional from you all in the audience as well. But this is the time to ask the nerds over here your question about PointSense Plant. And let me look up in the list here, John. If you see one too, go ahead and.
Well, one thing I would like to mention here, just for anyone that's wondering, version 15 is technically out. We actually released a soft release a little bit over a week ago, and what we're doing right now is getting the maintenance licenses generated for everybody, as well as you know, doing any kind of bug fixes and just, you know, presentation upgrades. But for anyone that's using 2015 or anyone that wants to use the new functionality, we definitely have a version available for you. We can give you a license on demand, and then we can get you started with it. So it is out, and then we're going to actually have a subsequent, I guess, hard release very soon. But you know, for all intents and purposes, the software is available.
Yeah, yep. And I think, you know, there's a few questions like, where can I find this new version? We have a lot of maintenance customers sitting in right now. You can find it on our website for download. But if you just want us to send you the link, just email info@kubitusa.com. We'll get you set up. Right now, the licensing team in Germany is putting together the automated emails that go out to maintenance customers to make sure that you get your instructions on how to update. But if you want to update now and you don't want to wait for that, just let us know. We'll get you set up one by one and get you started. Some of the things that you saw in the webinar, like the scan navigation spheres and moving from scan to scan, like I stated earlier, that's going to be put into the product in the next a week or so. So you can wait for that if you want, or you can get started now with some of the cool stuff that's already in there. Let me see what's going on here with questions.
There was one question if we work with Regal scanners. Yes, we actually work with, as far as I know, every scanner manufacturer out there. You know, if we can bring it in, well, not only Kubit, but even just if you can bring it in a recap, you know, that's just, at that point, it's a cloud that goes into AutoCAD. So we can deal with that. But, you know, even if you have some, you know, off-brand, or maybe it's one of those hand scanners, or I've even seen people with Connect data before. Just if you can get it to a certain format, you know, what's called a binary format, that's fine. But really, all you have to do is get it to an ASCII file. So TXT, ASC, PTS, things like that, and we'll be able to read it that way as well.
Yeah, I mean, we don't recommend that file, but let's say, tell us your scanner and your registration software. We'll tell you the best way to use PointSense Plant. Question here, it's kind of a two-part question from a few different people. When we were talking about VirtuSurv, how does it create those panoramic images? The first part is it creates it from the scanner manufacturer's file format. So, for example, if you're using a Leica scanner, we would say, you know, export PTG or E57 files and import them into VirtuSurv. Prefero, you know, FLS, FWS. But then the second part of the question is, what if I'm using Recap Pro? And we know this is a high demand right now for people that are switching over to Recap Pro for doing the registration. VirtuSurv's still not importing files from Recap Pro at the moment, but we should have an update to VirtuSurv in the very near future. I don't want to put too much pressure on the product managers and developers, but it's high on the to-do list, so where you'll be able to import files from Recap Pro into VirtuSurv as well to create those planar views. So just be on the lookout for that, and we'll put out announcements when it's ready. Let's see.
There's a couple of questions here saying that we don't have, we're not going to go to 2015. Our software works 2011 to 2015. You know, we changed the name of our product, our version number, to kubit 15 instead of, you know, or PointSense 15 instead of version 9 because we think it's easier to kind of keep track of it, you know, based on year. But as long as you're, you know, as long as you're current on your maintenance, you can get this version right now, and it does work all the way from 11 to 15.
All right. The other question is, you know, does it work with any flavor of AutoCAD? Yeah, you don't need, you know, we always show Plant 3D in these demos because, you know, it's nice to show the export to Plant 3D objects, and a lot of our users are using Plant 3D, but you can use any flavor of AutoCAD 2011 through 2015, whether it's a civil, MEP, AutoCAD architecture, it doesn't matter. Question is, will you be adding anything dealing with ductwork and tying that into AutoCAD MEP? And I replied to this, but ducting is on the to-do list, and so is the options for exporting, you know, intelligent AutoCAD or Revit MEP objects. You can see that we already started that process with the structural objects going into Revit, so those things are on the to-do list. But, you know, there's a lot of things on the to-do list, but we know that ducting is something that's been demanded.
There's one here saying that we work with Bentley, making specs. Can we use this? If you're using AutoPlant, there is a way to bring that in and convert it. We can answer that, you know, after the webinar via email or however you need. And then you were asking, can we still use Bentley for making ISOs? Yeah, there's a lot of different output options that we have available. Once you're done creating the pipe run, if you're working in AutoPlant, what I do is just create the center line, and then there's a feature there. I believe it's called Auto Route LR. I might be mistaken on the name a little bit, but a lot of our customers are using that and able to transform that center line into their intelligent AutoPlant objects, and then from there you just generate your isometric.
It kind of works the same in CADWorks as well. I mean, if you do a line to pipe in CADWorks, it'll flood the, you choose your pipe size, you know, your spec is set, click the routing line that you've exported from Kubit, and it will route the pipes, elbows, and T's. But what's nice about the center line from Kubit is that it will mark with points along the line where the inline fittings should go, so that you can break the line and place the inline fittings pretty easily. It's got the node snaps on it for you know, starting and end point of each inline fitting.
There's another question here about aligning. How do we recommend aligning a cloud to either another drawing or a 3D model? It's really your choice. If you want to realign the cloud, you can do that, or if you want to realign the 3D modeling. It really depends on you know, if one's XREFed, I'd probably keep that one where it is and then align what's in the current drawing. But a method that I've used a very long time, and I'm kind of surprised because a lot of people kind of jump through hoops to get stuff aligned sometimes, is you need to find 3 corresponding points in the current cloud and then in the geometry or another cloud that you're trying to line up with it. And what you do is you set your UCS using a UCS 3-point command. Click the 3 points out of the cloud you're trying to move. Once you're in that UCS, you cut the cloud, and then you set that UCS to the 3 points in the new geometry, and then do a paste. When it asks you for a base point, you put 0, 0, 0, and that is the fastest and really the easiest way to do an actual 3D rotation of a cloud. I have instructions on that actually written out, so
I'm pretty sure my head just exploded, John. No, I'm sure John can provide those instructions if you need them.
I just grew a pair of glasses.
Right, naturally. Is it possible to use AutoCAD LT or AutoCAD Lite? No, it's not, because AutoCAD Lite does not have a point cloud engine or the 3D capabilities. So you do need a full-blown AutoCAD. Let's see, what's next, John?
I'm seeing a lot of people saying that the upcoming webinar is a great idea, so I'm glad to see that. As far as questions, I think we're through all of them. Can you export to AutoCAD Fabrication MEP? Actually, we can work inside of MEP. So if you're saying AutoCAD MEP, we work directly inside of that.
He wants to know, though. Well, maybe he wants to know if we can create the fabrication objects. I think for the piping, it's kind of like the standard AutoCAD MEP. You would do the routing line at the moment. For the fabrication for structural, I think it has an SDNF. Don't quote me on that. And if it does, I just haven't tested it, but you can certainly try to see if it comes over intelligently with that SDNF import for fabrication. If it doesn't work, the worst case scenario is you can create the solids for the structural, and it has the center lines, so you can just pop them on pretty quickly. But it would be interesting to test.
Yeah, in MEP, if you have a center line for piping or even conduit or other items, you can actually right-click on that, and then you're going to get a Convert To option, and it'll pull up a dialog box where you can set it to any object that you have loaded in your project. So if you want to set it to a certain size pipe or a certain size flex pipe or flex duct, or however you want to do it, that's one way to get the objects in. But it's not as seamless as the Plant 3D method.
Yeah. Always trying to add more to those. There is a Spanish question that I can brutally try to translate, even though my last name is Diaz. I think it's asking something along the lines of getting a no pipe found in Walk the Run. Those are the types of things that we'd like to cover in the best practices webinar. What happens if you get that? You know, is it a parameters issue? Is it a settings issue? Where are these things located? That's all stuff we'd like to cover to make it easy. And the other thing that we didn't mention yet is that John and the PointSense Plant team over here are actually working on a trial guide that's almost complete. We'll be rolling that out soon as well. And the trial guide will really help, for those of you that are already users, really help knock the rust off and help you review each feature in the product. And for people that are new to the product, it will walk you through from the most basic steps to getting more advanced in the product. Of course, we offer advanced trainings here, and we recommend it for new users, but I think this trial guide coming out will help answer a lot of questions and refresh everyone's memory.
Yeah, it's really kind of like an interactive command reference. So you basically choose what, you get a list and you choose what you'd like to learn about. You know, I want to do piping, or I want to do structural, and it kind of walks you through from start to finish all the key things you need to know. So it's really meant to get people, you know, from start to finish when they've had no experience with the software, but even for people that have had limited experience, it's a real good way to sort of act as a refresher.
Yep. A good point from Jeff here, actually, you know, mentioning that it would be good to show other workflows, like getting to the end deliverable with AutoCAD MEP with the current product. You know, of course we want to make the nice exports, but sure, that's a great idea to maybe show in an upcoming webinar. What is the workflow for if I'm an AutoCAD MEP user at the moment? So good idea there. Maybe we can add that to something in the near future. Any more questions? I think we kind of went through everything here that I can see. Now's your chance. Let's see. How will you inform us when the trial guide is available and how to access? So we're going to send out a mass email to let you all know about the updates. And of course, as we post new functionality, most likely we'll be creating a video for it on our YouTube channel. If you are not a member of the YouTube channel, you should go ahead and join. You get notified when a new video is available. So we'll add, you know, like John mentioned, we're going to be really enhancing the tie-in point routine throughout the year. So it just gets a lot smarter and easier and faster. We'll definitely have a video on that. We'll probably make something on using the scan navigation. You know, join that YouTube channel so that you get notified when something's new. But we'll put out an email to users as well to let you know. And if you're ever curious, you know, where the new releases are, you can always find them on our website on the product page. You can compare your version to the version that's installed, or that, excuse me, the version that's uploaded on the website. Let's see, PDMS. Yeah, currently there's not a PDMS workflow. We are exploring that option as well. But right now, you know, the biggest focus, because we have so many Autodesk users, is trying to solve the Autodesk user workflow first. But we definitely realize PDMS is something that would be nice. I mean, just having a tool that creates AutoCAD objects to PDMS is nice, you know. So definitely on the to-do list and something that we discuss internally over here, just to let you know. Let's see, I want that trial guide. Okay, you will have it. Okay, any more questions? This is last live attempt. Otherwise, send us an email and let us know. And again, if you need to get set up on the new version, you can do that now. Or wait until we put out the spheres option, the scan navigation options. So, all right. Well, thanks again for your participation. A lot of great questions here, and thanks for sitting in. And let's have more of these informative webinars. Today, of course, was a what's new, but you know, John and I want to start doing more of this stuff to help you all out on your workflows and make you all stronger users. So have a great rest of the week, and we will talk to you all soon. Thanks.